maybe. It's easy because you have the hand mic. Good morning, everyone. We are about to start a little late, so let's go quick with this day too. I hope everybody had a good sleep and a good party last night, because I think it was really amazing at the beach. And I hope, well, everybody's awake now. It's good fresh air. And I really like to give Thomas Schneider, Mark Avel, and Jovan the word today to go on where we finished, let's say, last day, yesterday. So have a good and a half hour with lots of questions for you to get awake and be part of it.
Yes, thank you. And of course, thank you for your last night's event. That was really nice. Nice location, good atmosphere. So thank you very much for this. I guess we all enjoyed it. My name is Thomas again, Swiss government. We have here Jovan Corvalia, that you have already seen yesterday. He was one of the co-leads of the Executive Secretariat. And we have Mark Carwell, an old friend for those who work in internet governance for a long time. He used to work for the British government, representing the UK in a number of fora. And this is the so-called part 2 on the report of the UN Secretary General's high-level panel on digital cooperation. And since the motto of this year's EuroDIG has the word cooperation and also digital in it, of course this is one of the closer links. We've heard yesterday by Jovan quite a good summary of what the panel was, how it worked, what the outcome was, and today we'll briefly introduce to you the process that we were offering for the European stakeholders to talk about it. But of course, we should use this 20-something minutes to have an exchange already on the substance. So we'd like to hear from you what you think. So, and Jovan, of course, will be able to answer your questions, and we will be able to answer your questions, but you can also talk to each other about the report. So basically, now the report is out. The UN Secretary General has received it from the co-chairs of the panel, and it's now up to the UN Secretary General to think about, okay, what am I going to do with this report? What process am I going to do? One of the recommendations that are in the report is actually that the panel members advise the Secretary General to hold consultations and to basically get the feeling of the global community, what they think of the recommendations, and then implement it. And what we already as EuroDIG decided in January, that we would like to, being the first ones that meet after the report is public, to offer a space to discuss here physically and exchange views of European stakeholders on the findings, on the recommendations of the report. And in addition to that, we thought it may be useful to offer an online space for dialogue, for exchange of views to European stakeholders. And so it is in the making. It will go live early next week. The plan is the following, that there will be 2 ways where you can use the EuroDIG website to exchange views on the report. One thing is a simple thing, that there will be an email address that you can send a document, a PDF or whatever, with a 1-pager, 2-pager, should not necessarily be a 50-pager comment, but you can send a document to an address of the EuroDIG Secretariat. They will then receive all the documents, put them online, make them available so that others can see your comments too, and that will then be compiled into a synthesis document, and then before the IGF in Berlin, so that will be made available as the one collation of European views on the report. In addition to this, you will have the report on the website paragraph by paragraph, and there's an option. You need to register, say from which stakeholder group you are, which country you're affiliated to, and then you can comment on each single paragraph of the report and say, I think this is a great idea, or there is something missing, or this is completely going in the wrong direction, or whatever. So you have these 2 ways. One is a more generic way of sending in a paper with comments, and the other one is go directly into the text and make your comments on the text, and then others can make comments on your comments, and so on and so forth. So this is the concept. And Mark, our friend, is the moderator, the facilitator for this. He will be available to ask questions also, but he will be the one that will then lead let's say, the synthesization of this. He also, there will be some guiding questions that we will put up on the website. So let me give the floor to Mark to say a few words also on his role. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Thomas, and good morning, everybody. It's great to see so many here promptly after last night's very enjoyable beach party. So thanks very much for coming. I would just underline a couple of points. It's the comment platform is already up and running. I mean, there were some comments already posted on it. So really look at the report in its entirety. I know a lot of people are focusing on the options for an architecture, IGF Plus and so on. But look at the whole of the report in its entirety. Look at the rationale for its proposals, the issues it raises about gaps and mechanisms that might resolve those gaps and enhance the levels of cooperation across the whole digital community worldwide. And then secondly, don't take the report solely as a given. You know, it's also a trigger for new ideas that can build on what's in the report. I think the panel is looking for that in terms of responses as well. So have a look at the context, the rationale, and get your comments in. We really need your help. We need this intersessional project for EuroDIG to be a success and to make a valuable contribution to the follow-up to the panel's report. That's enough for me. But thanks for luring me out of retirement after I left government service back in March. It's great to be back at EuroDIG and helping with this process. Thank you. Shall I hand over to Johan now to say a few words? Yep, thank you.
You have a mic on your own.
Oh, you got one, yeah.
It works well. Well, Mark, it's great to have you back after a few months. Good morning, and thank you for a lovely party last evening. I experienced beach party in the Netherlands, and it was really great. Thank you for organizing it. First of all, I would like to congratulate you for acting in a way what we can call it permissionless diplomacy. Because one of the problems is that usually in diplomacy and public spaces, people wait for mandate, wait for a green light, and it's great that you just took this initiative, set up the platform, and initiated the debate. I think this is expected from the UN and the colleagues who are now coordinating the follow-up exercise. That's it, yep.
So now I think we should stop talking. And by the way, sorry for the gender balance of this panel. Yeah, the floor is yours. Make your comments on the report, on the process, ask your questions. Well, let's try to have a debate. We know it's early in the morning, but maybe some of you may have some views. Now is the time to express them.
In particular, if you found some typo or spelling mistakes, you know.
Who has not seen or read anything of the report yet? That means many of you have actually already looked at it to some extent at least. So everything as you expected, everything fine, nothing controversial. Or should we get some coffee into the room? Yeah, somebody breaks the ice. Thank you, Paul.
Hi, good morning. Just to get us going, it's Paul Blaker from the UK government. Thank you very much for the presentation yesterday, and congratulations on producing such a good report. I think there is a lot in it that the UK government would support, particularly around sustainable development, digital inclusion, gender equality, some really good points in there. There are some recommendations, I think, where we would be more cautious and maybe even have concerns in some areas, but I think we look forward to discussing all of those recommendations with colleagues over the coming months. I wanted to ask a question about multi-stakeholderism in the report. It says a lot of good things about multi-stakeholder approaches, but it doesn't say so much about how the UN itself needs to change in order to become more of a trusted platform for these kinds of multi-stakeholder discussions to tackle these issues. It talks a little bit about the UN role, but the UN, we know, essentially is an intergovernmental organisation, and stakeholders often find it very difficult to engage with those kinds of processes. They sometimes find it difficult to get into the room, and when they are in the room, sometimes the governments don't pay much attention to what they have to say. So did the panel discuss at all some of the things that the UN itself needs to consider in order to tackle some of these issues? Thanks.
Yes, the question of multi-stakeholder approach and multilateral was quite topical in the panel discussion. And we essentially, I would say, organized discussion around 3 points. The first one is what I mentioned yesterday, to avoid this dichotomy multi-stakeholder versus multilateral. Second point is to have a clarity in discussion. I think that one of the problems in multi-stakeholder space, in multilateral space, in tech space, is that we have less and less clarity on discussion. What is the role of different actors? How the other stakeholders can be involved in the process? And that was, throughout the report, we try also to bring a clarity in language and the using of the different concepts. And that was, I would say, the second point. The third point was related to the UN. And I would say that we have managed to make a major breakthrough also in modus operandi of the panel. You have to walk the talk. It's not enough just to say, okay, we need the multi-stakeholder involvement in the UN system. What we did in a way of organizing consultation was important not only to this community, which is quite used to the inclusive dialogue, but also to other communities which tend to work in different spaces, more, let's say, negotiating and intergovernmental spaces. Therefore, we initiated or added to that what Secretary General called inclusive multilateralism. I think we'll be hearing more and more about this concept. Now you can frame it in different way, multi-stakeholder, inclusive multilateralism and the other things. Back to the second point of clarity, it is very important to understand what does it mean to have decision-making process, consultation process, and where governments have to make decisions according to their treaty obligations in international organizations. How to open those spaces to more inclusive participation would be, in my view, one of the major challenges of digital policy ahead of us, because digital policy is shifting to these treaty organizations. Digital is discussed in the World Health Organization, WTO, and other places. Therefore, that will be the major challenge. How to have more inclusion of businesses, civil society, tech community, academia, in, let's say, discussion on data, health data, or discussion in WTO, which is not necessarily the symbol of a multi-stakeholder approach. That would be the major challenge, I would say. And that was well accepted by our colleagues from the UN, from other agencies. And I think there is a ready-made understanding and about the need to change and to have more inclusion. Obviously, the practice will be challenging, as we know, but I would say that if you put in efforts in that direction, and if there is a persistence, clarity on discussions, not naming and shaming, which is very dangerous in this field, but constructive approach, we can achieve a lot, especially for the inclusive multilateralism in the specialized organizations like WHO, WTO, humanitarian organization, migration, and other places.
Thank you, Jovan. Wolfgang?
Thank you very much. Good morning. And also from my side, thank you for the great party yesterday in Scheveningen. My name is Wolfgang Kleinwächter. I'm in the Global Commission on Stability in Cyberspace. And I have a question with regard to the chapter on trust and security, because one of your proposals in the panel is to have a global call for trust and security in cyberspace. The wording is the same what the Paris call for trust and security stands for. This was signed or is signed now by around 80 governments and 500 non-state actors. But we have in this field now so many various initiatives and documents. We have the Tech Accord from Microsoft, we have Siemens Charter of Trust. Microsoft now is planning a Digital Peace Institute in Geneva. Telefonica has proposed a new deal for internet governance. And my question is, we have a situation which is similar 10 years ago with principles for internet governance. We had so many documents, declarations from the OECD, Council of Europe, BRICS countries. All this was channeled finally into the Net Mundial Declaration. So my question is, we have so many security, cybersecurity initiatives now on the table. What is your expectation? Will this all be channeled into a bigger document at the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, or do you just add another call for trust and security to the many documents, and how you would organize, let's say, the enhanced communication among the various initiatives so that we do not duplicate what is already on the table? Thank you.
Well, let me start with enhanced. I know it will excite quite a few colleagues in the room. And yes, Wolfgang, that's exactly what is a challenge, not only in security field, cybersecurity, but you can find it in AI. I would say, since AI is a fashionable topic this year, there is a real inflation of events, discussion, charters on ethics and this. Now, one can argue that why we need so many activities, which to the large extent repeat similar concerns and similar principles. I'm in the camp that would argue that let's have as many initiatives as it is possible if they reflect the needs of people to express their views or to engage their communities. And that's in principle a welcoming approach. Now, obviously, there is a question how to coordinate. There are a few side effects to this general principle, to have people discussing all over the world concerns of cybersecurity or artificial intelligence this year. There are two major concerns. One is that obviously sometimes it is a waste of resources. And second problem, which is sometimes undermined here in the countries that can afford to follow many processes, is that small and developing countries and stakeholders from small and developing countries simply cannot physically follow so many parallel processes. Now, one can say that similar issues are discussed in different places, but it creates a feeling of being excluded, not being engaged, and it can lead easily into some sort of uneasiness or even frustration. Therefore, one of the functions in the annex, which Thomas highlighted yesterday, is that coordination function, which is not necessarily cooperation function, which is not a function that should be imposed on different processes in cybersecurity or AI, but the place where the information and views about different events can be exchanged. And we say, okay, in Helsinki we discuss human rights and AI. In Geneva on AI and good we discuss sustainable development. There is this overlap in discussion. Or in Paris we discuss at UNESCO AI in ethics. This is the first point, to have some sort of idea what's going on, and to put around the table people from the conferences like Web Summit in Lisbon. It's a huge event. And those events are not anymore just tech events, they're increasingly policy events. Or South by Southwest in the United States. You can name quite a few initiatives. And how to connect the dots among these initiatives and to at least make them aware that similar discussion is going just behind the wall at the other event. This is the first point, to have some sort of enhanced communication. The second point is to provide small and developing states or actors from developed states who do not have resources with a relatively easy access to grasp the complexity to understand what are the threads in discussion, what are the main topics on human rights and ethics or AI. That's one of the ideas around this function of cooperation within the model. When it comes specifically to cybersecurity, we have been working quite carefully that field because of the two initiatives in the UN, the UN governments, UNGG and OpenEdit Group. And this is where commitment was discussed as a possibility to have some sort of supplement to the current processes without replacing current processes. I would say that part of our recommendation will take quite a bit of time in discussion of among member states and other actors. It is not definitely low-hanging fruit like help desk or even general commitment which will be discussed in the context of the 75th year of the United Nations.
And maybe to add one thing, it's if something is new or fairly new and it's not clear to everybody from the start which institution is the best one to be the basis of the framework, of course then there's a competition or a diversity of institutions and processes that somehow try to position them on the one hand, but also try to offer a space. And as long as it's recommendations and best practices and so on, it can be a whole variety. If there's a feeling that something needs to be binding, of course, then you would have to agree on one process, on one institution. And if that is not clear in the beginning, it may become clear over time which framework is the best one, the most trusted on a particular issue to go for something binding. And in Europe, normally this is then in the end the Council of Europe because it's the most comprehensive a multilateral institution. In the UN, it may depend on what the issues are. And we are not there yet. We're definitely not there in the field of security where there's no agreement on which institution is the best, the most trustworthy to get a reasonable result. In other fields, it's similar that there's still people are still looking for finding out where do I want this to go and where do I not want this to go. And I think we're in the middle of this process. But if there's a need for something binding, at some point in time you have to agree. It can be maybe several institutions if you can divide the issue in several aspects. But if it's supposed to be holistic, you will have to end up somewhere. And if people don't agree, it won't happen because then there will be no process. Yes, please. Just stand up and take the mic. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you very much for this report. I'm Antonio and I work in the southwest of Spain in the field of digital inclusion. And our main challenge is to get young people in rural areas motivated. So I checked in the report and there is 7 times the word youth appearing. I would like to ask what is the role that youth organizations have played in the development of the report and what is the message that organizations working with youth should take from these recommendations, please. Thank you.
We consulted extensively youth in different events. We had the targeted discussion and also side discussion like with the gaming community, which is mainly a community of concern of the youth. The question of rural areas, there are 2 types of exclusion, youth generational and also we can call it space related, cities versus rural areas. It has been discussed intensively, especially when it comes to developing countries. Now, what can be done practically in the follow-up? I think a youth organization should organize themselves like we are organizing ourselves here at the EuroDIG, and the follow-up on these specific tracks. They have now the context, wider context, especially on the recommendation 1, when it comes to the inclusion, and that's the sort of general suggestion. More specifically, we can discuss later on, and I can give you the pointers to the part of the UN system which was particularly interested in the question of youth, like UNICEF, and there was an interesting concept, just this idea, which came into discussion. I think it came into report as a notion. It's a right of future generations. What are we going to leave for the future generations when it comes to digital knowledge, possibility to use their innovation, and that's just an interesting concept which was discussed.
We are getting short in time, so we have 2 more comments, and then I think we would probably need to hand over to the next plenary. So thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Jan Goosenaars from Wikinetics. I will have a presentation this afternoon about hashtag coding. I would like to comment about the previous question about documents that are confusing the image of where we are in terms of security or whatever other topic. A few years ago, the United Nations had an initiative making the UN paperless. Now, I think the UN needs another initiative of becoming information-centric. Now, information centrism has been covered in a few, let's say, reports by the Obama administration about open government. It's really very important not to discuss, and facing, for instance, least developing countries, small developing countries and so forth, their problem of coping with the information overload and the extra, let's say, hurdle that is created by hiding specific content in big documents, it's really a major problem. Now, in hashtag coding, I will present this afternoon the overall view, but we also have a view in which we do article by article coding in any report. We could do that for the report of the Digital Cooperation Group, and actually I'm very pleased to see the initiative with the possibility to comment article by article. But in fact, you can, for each article, create an open discourse in the internet just by giving it a hashtag code. For instance, DC and the number of the article in the report. Now, the UN, I think, should really take such, let's say, approach very seriously, because they are one of the major contributions of documents. And these documents, they are one of the major hurdles to communication. That's my comment.
Sure. I'm coming for your, I'll join your session definitely. In brief, one of the aims of the panel was to increase the clarity of discussion, because it is not anymore the discussion just for experts, it is a discussion for all citizens. I have to admit that we faced a bigger challenge in, let's say, decoding tech language than UN language. We had two challenges. On one side, UN bureaucratic policy language, and on the other side, tech language. And somehow in the panel, those few of us who were trying to increase clarity had a bigger challenge on the tech side to translate tech language into the, let's say, understandable common sense language.
Thank you. The lady, please.
Good morning. I'm Anelia Dimova from Bulgaria, Ministry of Transport, Information Technology and Communications. My question is on the page 2 of the document, there is written, we believe that a set of metrics for digital inclusiveness should be urgently agreed. So far, there are too many indicators. I mean, the last so interesting UNESCO's Internet Universality Indicators. Can you tell us something more about these new indicators on inclusiveness? Thank you.
Sure. Well, the panel's report is a policy document produced by 22 members. In discussion, we brought not only UNESCO, but also OECD, World Bank, ITU. You have quite a few metrics. What the panel members felt is that for some reason, there is not enough coordination, and there is no metrics or data based on that metrics which focuses mainly on inclusivity, and not necessarily technical access inclusivity, but we came to about 15 different categories of digital inclusivity, including multilingualism, question of rural areas, youth, generational aspects. Therefore, there was a feeling that in addition to the Economist Inclusion Index, which is probably the most developed, there is a need to combine all of those indexes and possibly to develop new metrics that could focus more specifically on a holistic approach to digital inclusion.
Okay, Jovan, thanks, and thanks for those questions. We've overrun already, so we better wind up and pave way for the plenary on cybersecurity, I think it is. You'll see in the program there is not really a part 3, but I will be available in the Amazon room from about 3:45 onwards to explain more about the process and to log any further questions. But please do use the comment platform, which, as I say, is up and running. And thanks very much for attending, and enjoy the rest of EuroDIG here. So we'll finish on behalf of everybody with thanks. Thank you.
And watch and be on time. So, thank you, Joe, Mark, and Thomas, and thank you, Mark, for wrapping up. And